All right, we're ready to get started. How are y'all doing? So I'm not going to say much. I just want to welcome you. If you're not familiar with this university or this facility, this Coppola Recital Hall, Georgia State University School of Music. I'm Ben Jonas. I oversee the audio production program here at GSU. I recognize about half of you, so I know some of my students showed up. But those of you that are new to Georgia State, we have an audio program. We have a music industry program. I'd love to tell you more about it if you want to chat a little bit later, but I want to hand off the mic to my colleague and partner here, Jeremy Dudman. He's the chair of our AES chapter in Atlanta. Let's give it up for Jeremy, and he's going to continue with the introduction.
Hey everybody, I think I met most of you out there, so just in case, I want to say thanks to Mr. Bill for being here, thanks to Ben for hosting us at GSU, and anybody, well, I guess most of you heard of AES because you had to sign that sheet, right? Everybody's heard of AES at least? What AES is. I'm just here, I'm the chair of the local AES section. We're the Audio Engineering Society. If you want to learn more, we have our AESATL.org website. Also, we're on social media, on all the social media websites, so you can learn more about events. I do want to go and say we usually host a monthly event, anywhere from this awesome event with Mr. Bill to post-production. We toured Smart Post a few months back. We have a location sound workshop every year. We have a cool holiday dinner at Maggiano's at Cumberland, and we just get together with Simpty and just eat good food and talk with other industry people and win gear. I won a vacuum last year, so it's kind of cool. And a 3D printer, so you can win cool things. Just like tonight, you might win some plugins. We have an event coming up next month, and this is AES members only, so you might want to join AES in the next month. Audio Engineering Society, by the way. Again, it is a celebration of the engineers from Atlanta for the 50th year of hip hop. So it's going to be at Stankonia Studios. I think it's November 11th. So we're going to have information going out on the mailing list that you just signed up for. So that should be going out like any moment, maybe in the next few days. So check for that. That will be AES members because there's just limited space inside of Stankonia Studios. So it's classic studio in town. So hopefully everybody can make that. So cool. If you want to learn more about AES, see me after. Again, AESATL.org. Also, there's the big national AES website, AES.org. That's where you can join. There's a membership tab. We don't take any money. Just go through them. So cool. Enough of that. On to Mr. Bill. Take it away.
Yo. How you doing? Thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks for these people for having me here. Cool, so tonight I'm going to do a talk about AI in music, which is, I don't know, like both a really exciting thing and a very contentious thing at the moment. I'm going to go over like how it works and how I've been using it and stuff like that, and then also just kind of like touch on some like philosophical points that I've sort of realized through using it as well. The first of which is that I think creativity doesn't live in a vacuum. I think people like to think that they have this like massive ownership over ideas when they make a piece of music. They're like, I did that. That's me. This like, and they just have this like huge amount of almost like ego, I guess, about it. Is really what it is. But really, I think what happens is you hear a bunch of music that you like, and you're exposed to a bunch of opinions from your peers, and you hang around people who probably like very similar music to you, and then when you yourself go to make music, you essentially create some idealized version of all of those things combined. And this is exactly what AI does too. You send it a data set, and you go like, here's all the things I want you to look at and make something based off, and then it spits out an output. So it's very much like a human brain. And the other kind of point that I've realized is that we're at the point where no one is short of having sounds. Like every possible sound exists on like Splice or Loop Masters or whatever. There's like a set of patches for almost every genre for Serum out there, or there's a tutorial on how to make like every single sound or how to produce every single genre. So I think all that's left, like there's a surplus of everything, and the only thing that's left that there isn't a surplus of is creativity, i.e. how to arrange those sounds and how to use these things in interesting musical ways and how to have strong musical themes and ideas and stuff. And this is where I think AI is actually really interesting. I think that it almost in a way semi-solves this problem. It's kind of like a creativity generator. So I want to introduce this company that I have nothing to do with called Harmon AI. And they originally just started as a fork of Stable Diffusion. And for those who don't know what Stable Diffusion is, it's pretty much that thing online that you type a prompt into and then it spits out an image. And this dude, Zach, who runs this company, decided, I'm going to create a fork of that, and made this thing called Dance Diffusion. And if you go onto their GitHub, you can find that. I think it's just called Sample Generator on their GitHub, but everyone's been calling it Dance Diffusion for some reason. So basically the way that this thing works is the exact same way that Stable Diffusion works, but it has a synthesizer attached to the output. So basically with Stable Diffusion, you feed it a bunch of, if you want to train your own like image model, you give it a bunch of images and then you say like, this is what I want you to make basically, and then out the other end comes images that are similar to that one. And the way that it works in audio is no different. It basically converts all of the audio that you feed it into images of a spectrogram, and then it creates images in the background that look similar to those spectrograms, and then it uses image to audio synthesis to get it back into audio. So it's actually just Stable Diffusion with a image to audio synthesizer attached to the output. So this thing that they created, Dance Diffusion, which you can get to through here, this sample generator page on the Harmon AI GitHub, it runs locally and it also runs in this thing called Google Colab. So Google Colab is basically a way to execute Python directly in your browser, and it's a way to access resources from Google without owning them yourself, basically. So you can go to this collab page, which you can get to here from this Harmon AI GitHub. And here you can basically connect to a GPU, and that's what I'm doing right now. And then it gives you access to some sort of GPU. So on a Mac like this one, the GPU is not NVIDIA as far as I know, or if it is, it won't run Stable Diffusion. What is it actually? It's, I don't know, whatever it is, but for some reason you can't run Stable Diffusion on here, or Dance Diffusion. So this is a way that you can do it by accessing an NVIDIA GPU, basically. So it gives you instructions here on how to do it, and I won't bore you too much with it, but basically you just go through here and you just run all of these things. You say run anyway, and install some dependencies. Basically you just go through here and just click all of these play buttons, and that will just like each play button or like, section here is just executing a bunch of Python and connecting to some Google GPU. And you can use Dance Diffusion through here pretty much. But before we do that, let me show you some examples. So here's some sounds that were created by training this on some bases that I just found on the internet. So it's basically just a really long file. I'll actually open it in Ableton so you can see the waveform as well. Yeah, so this is just installing a bunch of dependencies and stuff like that. This also makes it easier so you don't have to like go on your computer and install a bunch of dependencies, like install a bunch of Python libraries and stuff. So let's just make sure this is correct. Yep. And I'm going to open up this bass sound in here. So it just spat out like just a long 1 minute file pretty much of just a bunch of random bass sounds that sound like this. just do that indefinitely after being trained on a folder of bases. Let's have a look at some other ones here. So these are just kind of like little one-shots that I trained. What else have we got here? I guess another big file of dubstep bases. I think these might have been trained on Virtual Riot or something. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. So one thing you can do with this is you can train a model on a bunch of audio, and then you can say, generate me a bunch of those sounds. But another thing that you can do is you can interpolate between models. So you can train one model and then a second model, and then you can say, combine these at a certain percentage of interpolation. So I can say, train a model on just my bass sounds, and then I can train a model on just Virtual Riot's bass sounds, and then I can say, now give me a 50-50 combo of both of those models. And I did that, and that's what we got here. It sounds like this. And one of the things that I find really interesting about this, or one thing that I've noticed whilst training these models, is how particular you have to be with the data sets. If you just feed it everything, like when I first got into this, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm just going to feed it my entire sample library, and then I'll have every sample. But the average of all sounds is literally just white noise. So all you get out is just white noise. And this kind of sparked a bunch of like philosophical thoughts for me. I was like, yeah, it's really interesting. Like the actual amount, like if you start from white noise, which is exactly what like diffusion models start with, and then you carve back from there, what is music out of that white noise after being carved away? It is actually such a small, minuscule part of like the expanse of all sound. Like music is such a tiny, tiny part of that. So to get anything useful out of these things, you have to really curate like a very specific type of data set. So for instance, I tried to train a model on breaks to see if I could get some like drum breaks. And I was like, the same as before, I was like, I'm just gonna train it on everything, and then I'll just have all the drum breaks. But instead I got this. It's like it's trying, but it's not doing a great job. And then I thought, what could be interesting is if I just trained it on 172 BPM breaks, and then even further, just train it on just 172 BPM jungle breaks. And from there, I was able to actually get it to do some half normal stuff. So we get this kind of stuff out of it. So it like eventually can understand tempo, but only if you give it just stuff at that tempo. Otherwise, it just has no idea what's going on. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Another thing that you can do is you can recreate sounds using a model. So for instance, if you have a model that's just trained on like vinyl recordings, you can say recreate this song, but just out of the vinyl recordings, and it'll do that as well. So here's an example of that. So where is the original thing? I don't know where the original thing is, but basically I tried to recreate like a tiny bit of this tipper tune using a model that was just vinyl recordings, and this sort of came up with. It's really hard to hear it in here, I think, with all the reverb in this room. Also, another thing that you'll notice about all of this AI stuff is it's just all smothered in noise. It's not like extremely clear what's going on in it. And the reason for that is because it's based on diffusion. And how that works is essentially through tons and tons of iterations, noise is a thing, and then denoise is a thing. So it pretty much like figures out how to get to a thing by smothering it in more and more white noise, and then figuring out how to get from that white noise back to the original thing. And then that's how you can say, all right, here's a thing, now get me to that thing, and it will turn that thing into white noise and then work its way back. But that makes it good for certain things, such as like hi-hats, which are already pretty noisy, or cymbals, you know. Or claps, it's pretty good for that as well. Or basses, as you heard before, it's pretty good at. Cool, so I'll run through some videos here of how to do this locally. I could also do this here through Google Colab, but it'll take a while, and I don't want to waste a ton of time, but basically the way you do it through Google Colab is you just continuously go through these little sections of code and just run them. So this one here is just saying check the GPU status, and you can see that we're connected to a Tesla T4. And then if we go down here, it'll say connected to your Google Drive. So it'll say, all right, connect to my Google Drive. And then after it connects to Google Drive, you then just basically keep going down the list and just executing all the bits of Python. Oh yeah, and then you can select the model that you want. There's 6 models, I guess, that you can pick from. There's this one called Glitch 440K, which is a bunch of stuff that's trained on this Discord server called glitch.cool. They like donated a bunch of sounds to these guys, and they train it on that. Then there's these models called J-Man Small and J-Man Large, and what these are trained on is the discog of a man named Jonathan Mann, I guess is his name. And he's been writing a song every day for, I think, like 5,000 days in a row. So they took like his 5,000 songs and trained a model on that. This next one, Maestro, is just trained on a bunch of piano. This Unlocked one is trained on a bunch of vinyl. And then this one, Honk 140K, is trained on recordings of Canadian geese for some reason. I don't really know why they did that. I've never used that one. I don't really see any point in using that one. And they all have a sample rate, and you just have to make sure that you match the sample rate down here with the model that you load. So for instance, if I load this one, this Maestro one, here it'll have a sample rate and whatnot. You just have to make sure that's all correct. And then you select a sampler, and then here you can start generating sounds. But this dude named Dion Timmer, who's a dubstep artist, made this GUI that if you're on Windows, you can just install and use it that way. So for the sake of time, I'll show you how training a model looks locally. So basically, this is a script that you just run, and then you get access to this like GUI, and then you go to the trainer and select a checkpoint model. So these checkpoint models that you want to start with are the ones that are given to you from Dance Diffusion, because training a model from scratch is incredibly resource intensive and it takes a really long time. But to fine tune a model from one that's already been trained to a new thing actually doesn't take that long. It takes like an hour or two, which is really interesting. You basically take the thing, like I was saying before, like the what music is in the expanse of all noise is such a small thing that to get from one type of music to another doesn't take much, but to get from complete noise to music takes a long time. So you basically load a checkpoint, so I'm just loading the glitch.cool one here, and then you just give it a name, make sure the sample rates and stuff are correct. I usually just go over to this page here on the Google Colab just to make sure that those sample rates are correct. Then you import it, and then you go over to the trainer here, and then there's this thing called weights and biases, which is this website that you have to hook it up to with an API key. So I usually just go grab the API key from there and then put it in here, and then you just give the model a name, like what you want your model to be called once it's finished training. So I just called this one DMB loops, and then you have to point it towards a data set. And like I said, for your data sets, you want to be like very specific as to what you train it on. So like, for instance, don't just give it like all kick drums. You want to give it like just Psytrance kick drums from 2005, or like just dubstep kicks from 2010 to 2012 or something. Like, you want to be as specific with your data set as possible to get the best results out. So this one, I don't even know if this is a very good data set, but this is just for the sake of showing you how to train a model. Also, you can train it on a zip file. It doesn't actually have to be a folder. You can like compress it and then train it on that. And then you just say what you want to start with, what checkpoint file. So that's the glitch.cool one. And then you just like set an output directory, like where you want that model to save. So I'm just selecting some folder on my computer called models. And then you can say how often you want a demo. And this is how often it will spit a demo out to weights and biases. And then the sample rate and stuff you want to train it on. And then it has this random crop control here. And with random cropping, it'll just take like a random slice of any part of the audio and train it on that. But if you're training it on drums, like one-shots, you want to turn that off. And then you just hit start training, and it will just continuously do that. And then what that looks like when you're training a model, let's go over to weights and biases real quick, and I can show you kind of like what the demo outputs look like. Okay, so let's say go to jungle breaks. So this is a model that I've trained previously. So this is what the training graph looks like. So this is basically the amount of steps that it's gone through, which is like 1,300, I guess, but I think it's 1,300 epochs, and per epoch is 250 steps. And epoch is like an amount of time that something is being trained on, but like basically a grouping of steps. So every 250 steps, I believe, is one epoch. So 250 times 1,300, so a lot of steps. And then here it'll just generate like a bunch of outputs. So I can show you what it sounded like on it generates an output every 250 steps, which is, it works out to be like once every 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So this is kind of where it started. It sounds nothing like jungle breaks at all, and it basically just sounds like white noise. And then if we go like one step over, or maybe that was 2 steps, so this is like 20 minutes after that, you get this. Still not really a break, but like you can see some transients forming in there and stuff. And if we go a tiny bit further than that, let's go like 2 or 3 steps further, and we get to this. Well, I guess starting to get the idea within about like, that probably was like 40 minutes in. And here you can see the spectrograms that it's actually creating for you too. So these spectrograms here are actually what it's creating. So this is just like stable diffusion, image generation stuff that it's doing in the background. And then it just takes these spectrograms and, like I said, converts them to audio using an image to audio synthesizer. Cool, so that is pretty much how training a model works. Let's see what else. I guess I can show you a video here of sound generation. So once you've actually trained a model, you don't have to train a model, you can just use the ones that they give you access to on the Google Colab page. But if you do train your own one, then you would go in here and you can see all of these are named epoch 1, 3, whatever, and a bunch of numbers, .ckpt. .ckpt is a checkpoint file. So that's like every amount of training steps, it'll save you a checkpoint. And then you can basically, like, through weights and biases, go through all the demos, figure out where you think it was sounding pretty good, and then just delete the rest of them. Because there is a point where you can overcook it. And if you just go too far, it just turns back into noise again. So there's like this middle ground that's good. So you just load whatever checkpoint file you want and then give it a name and make sure the sample rate and the size matches what it was trained on, and then hit import. And then after you've done that, you can see here it's like trimming the model and importing it. And then you just go over to the settings here and select the model that you just put in, and then you set a batch, where you put it on generation mode first and then set an output path and stuff. Just like point it to a folder where you want the sounds to go. And then you set a batch loop and an internal batch size. So the batch loop is how many batch sizes it will make, and the batch size is how many sounds you want it to make. So if you make it 1 and 5, it's gonna give you 5. But if you make it 5 and 5, it's gonna give you 25. Basically, it will give you like 5, like every time it finishes a cycle, 5 samples will pop out. And it will do that 5 times. So you just hit confirm, and then after that, it'll just basically run in your command line, and out the other end will pop breakcore. So yeah, you can see as it's happening here, that's empty, and once this here finishes, 5 samples will pop out. So there it goes, 5 samples. And they were kind of just the breaks that I was showing you before. And so yeah, every time it goes through this thing, another 5 will pop out. But you can make it as many as you want. Like sometimes I'll just set it to 50 and 50, which is 2,500 samples, and then I'll just go to bed. And I'll just wake up and just have like 1 million samples sitting there. So what is this one? Sound variation. Okay, yeah, so this one is the one that I was showing you with the tipper tune, but I think this is probably going to be a better example of it. So here I'm setting it to be this unconditional or unconned or whatever it's called model, or unlocked, sorry, which is the one that's trained on vinyls. And then I'm just cross-referencing this page here to check what the sample rate is. So I'm just making sure that I set the sample rate to the same thing when importing the model. And once again, it will do this thing where it says it's trimming the model, and then it'll say done, the model is in there. And then here I'm just setting the thing that I want it to do a variation on. Oh, actually, that's the folder that it's in. Hold on. Let me show you this before I show you that. Yeah, okay, so this is actually the thing that it was trying to recreate. So I'll play it again because there's a lot of reverb in here. And this is it trying to recreate it out of vinyl samples. It's basically just like taking all these like parts of old vinyl records and putting together this beat. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, to do that, you basically do all the same stuff that we just did, except in here you just give it a sound and you just say, here's a sound that I want you to recreate. And then after you give it the sound, you just set it to variation mode and it will just spit out variations of that thing. And then the last thing to show is how to interpolate between two different models, which is the same thing again. You just import the models the same way that we did the last 4 times or whatever. And then down here, you just select a secondary model, and then it gives you a secondary merge ratio parameter. And right now that's set to 0.5, which just means use 0.5, like half, 50% of that model, and then 50% of the other model. But then if you're like, oh, it sounds too much like that, then you can just like balance it out. You can just be like, okay, it's too Mr. Billish and not tippery enough. I'm gonna make it like, 10% more Mr. Bill and 10% less tipper or something. So yeah, kind of interesting stuff. So the other thing that I've tried with this is training it just on my music, like not on sounds like basses or snares, but like full songs. And I can show you some cool stuff that's come out of this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with my music, but I think it kind of sounds like it's getting the idea a little bit. So here's kind of the stuff that it was putting out. Oh yeah, also, it will only train on like 10-second chunks. So every 10 seconds, it'll just like completely switch to a different song. And yeah, it's like, it'll like have one idea and then it'll just be like, boom, completely different idea. So that will happen. Yeah, it'll just spit out these like massive demo files in weights and biases. And this is kind of what I was saying before, like creativity is the part that I think is lacking. And there's no, we've got all the sounds, we don't need more sounds, but we need like, I personally, I'll sit in the studio, I'll be like, all right, I've got all the sounds, now what do I do? Like I need an idea. And then I'll just start like noodling around and eventually hope an idea forms. But now, I just have a thing where I can be like, just spit out a ton of ideas and then hopefully I'll hear one of them and then they'll be like, oh, that gives me an idea. And then my ego will kick in and I'll be like, that was my idea. So the way that I've been using these is I will go through in Ableton and I'll cut like perfect loops out of it. And like I'll just, because like I said, it like will do something for a second and then it'll completely just like derail and start a whole new idea. So I'll just find these loops that make sense to loop, sort of like this. Or this. Or this. And then what I'll do from there is I'll use something like isotope RX to stem it. So then I'll have like the separate parts of that loop. So for instance, that first one, which sounded like this. So I ran it through RX and then I get the stems. So now I have stuff like this. That one's pretty useless. Same with that one. And also that one, I guess. But yeah, basically I'll try and like pull them apart and then I can kind of make music out of these stems. And even if these don't like make it to the final result of a tune at all, it's still like a good starting point, I feel like, for an idea to sort of like start working off of. So I'll open up a project where I've kind of messed around with this a little bit. I'll show you my sick AI beat. One thing that I'm really excited for is AI upsampling too. Like, imagine you can train a model just on side information, and then you can feed it like something completely mono. And instead of it like widening at like a widening plugin, you like a Haas delay or something, it can literally just generate the sides. That shit's gonna be so sick. All right, so yeah, here's all the original files. Like this is tons of shit. It's like lots, like hours of music here basically. And I pretty much went through this and just found all of the good loops. So you can see here, I've just like gone through and just cut all of these into loops that make sense. And then these are the loops that I ended up using. So I'll just like play a version of these. I don't know what's going on with this processing. Headphones. Oh, got to turn this on. Kind of a glitchy thing, and then there's this idea, which we already listened to. And then you can see I've like kind of gone through all of the stems here, and after splitting them in RX, kind of put them in their own groups and process them separately and stuff. So for instance, the percussion here, I used multiband dynamics kind of as an expander to make them a bit tighter, so they sound like this. Versus sounding like this, which in this room sounds identical because of all the reverb. But yeah, I'll like play this beat anyway. So yeah, kind of fun. So pretty much, yeah, I've just gone through and just treated these really like you would treat any sample, just chopped them up, processed them in different ways and whatnot. Like here, I just took some of these vocal things and cut them up. And so on and so forth. So yeah, like I said, I think this is like a really interesting like thing to just generate creativity from, versus something like Splice, which kind of has some ideas on there that you can like work off of, but I don't know. I feel like I don't feel as much ownership over those ones because I didn't pick like anything about them. Whereas with these ones, I can like train them specifically on what I want them to be trained on, and more specifically my own music generally. And then I can just have like a second version of me as a collaborator almost. So I want to talk about like some acknowledgements or like some considerations with AI, some like things that people are worried about and stuff. One thing that I've heard is people will say like, well, if AI can make music, then what's the point of me making music? Like kind of defeats the point, right? My response to that is like, how often do you hear a piece of music and you're like, that is perfect, I wouldn't change a single thing about it? Like, for me, it's never, ever. Like, even my own music, it's like, I'm such a like picky person or picky producer that like, you could show me anything and I'd be like, oh, you could change that, you could change this. Like even my favorite artists, I think this about. So I don't think AI is gonna generate anything anytime soon that I'm gonna be like, yep, that's perfect, run it. Like, I'm probably gonna wanna change something about it. Another fear is that AI is gonna cost artists their job. And I think for some things that's true. For some other things, I don't think it's true. Like maybe sample creation, like something like Splice, perhaps it might, run some sample pack companies out or something like that. Or maybe Splice will just turn into a thing where you put a credit in and a sample just pops out or something with perhaps like some sort of text prompt or something. I don't know. I really don't like the text prompt AI generators, to be honest. I feel like you don't really have enough control over what comes out of them. Like for instance, let me show you one actually. So this one is made by the same company, Harmon AI, who are now known as Stable Audio. And here you can give it a text prompt, right? So like, I don't know, let's put in like Bob Dylan, electronic synth, ARP, Terminator. Let's see what we get. And like, I have an idea of what I would expect that to sound like, right? Like to me, Bob Dylan, electronic synth, ARP, Terminator is a very clear genre. But we'll see what this comes up with. I can show you some other ones I've made. This one is pop ballad, Britney Spears, Toxic, Max Martin, Dr. Luke, and Katy Perry. And this is what it thinks that sounds like. Perfect. All right, let's check out Bob Dylan, electronic synth ARP, Terminator. So you just have like zero control over it. It's like, at least with the ones that you can train models on, you can say like, here's all of the stuff that I want you to kind of sound like, now make something like that. Whereas this one, it's like, yeah, I'll type in like synth ARP, for instance, and just let it go on that, like a very simple thing. And it's like, what kind of synth ARP are we gonna get? Are we even gonna get a synth ARP? Like, well, only time will tell. And also the other thing is you could type in synth ARP and hit go like 20 times in a row and never get the same thing, which is kind of a good thing as well. You kind of want it to be a little bit random so it's interesting, but also you kind of want it to be more controllable than this. What the fuck is that? This is bullshit. So anyway, fuck text prompts. That's my point. So another consideration, I guess, is that like AI is going to get so good that it's just going to wipe humanity out, and that will be obsolete in every way. And I think possibly, but also I think we're just in like an exponential growth point of it right now. And just like say aeroplanes or whatever, there was an exponential point of growth for aeroplanes. And then once the aeroplanes got so good that they just did the thing, we were like, all right, aeroplanes are good, and we just sort of stopped developing them as much. But if you were in that period of time when airplanes were exponentially getting way better, you'd be like, oh my God, this is gonna get so crazy. Just you wait, there's gonna be like little test tubes in the sky that have one human in them that like are able to go like 1 billion miles an hour, and they just didn't. Like they just got to a point where like, all right, they like do the thing that we think they're supposed to do and just stop developing them. AI is maybe a little different to that because it kind of trains itself in a way. But also, if AI gets so good that it's about to wipe out humanity, we're not worried about music production at that point. So I won't worry about it too much. Another thing that people say is if I train a model on a bunch of artists' sounds, and then I can make an unlimited amount of sounds that sound like that artist, that renders that artist obsolete. And I think that's not quite true, because AI can only do things that it's been trained on. It can't create new things, at least this one can't, or any of the large language models can't. Like literally, they're just glorified autocomplete functions. So they can pretty much just continuously figure out what is about to come next, and that's it. They can't like do what a human does and figure out like a completely new thing or learn a new thing, really. For instance, if you feed Dance Diffusion 1,000 notes, but all of those notes are just B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and E, it will never produce an F sharp, a G sharp, or an A sharp. Like it doesn't know what they are. So it's good at copying things, it's good at making mashups, but it's not very good at creating new stuff. It's very good at taking care of time-consuming, boring, laborious tasks, but it's not very good at creative tasks. So I'm not too concerned about that. And then another fear, I guess, is like if somebody trains a model on a bunch of artist sounds, then they can make an unlimited amount of sounds that sound like that artist, and then they can sell them and make a sample pack and make tons of money, and essentially taking money out of that artist's pocket. And in theory, you could, but that would be a dick move, and you shouldn't do that. Hopefully in the future, though, we'll see some more eloquent accounting systems for stuff like this. Like, I'm not really a fan of like blockchain shit and crypto, but like smart contracts might be able to solve this. I don't know. You know, like account everything that the model was trained on, and then every time it generates a sample and that was used, like the artist whose stuff was used to train that model will all get a kickback or something. But also, blockchain is just bullshit. All right, so I guess like my points to wrap up is creativity doesn't exist in a vacuum. No one ever just has an idea. It's always inspired by some other idea. And in a way, that makes us not that different to AI. We pretty much just compile experiences and influences and stuff that we've heard and create outputs based on that, which is pretty much what AI does. I think people are always just against technological advances. For instance, like when DAWs, like DAWs were first created, everyone hated on those too. And I see this same thing just happening with AI, but I think it's just going to be like a cool personal assistant. Hell yeah. And I would say just like, you know, use your best judgment when using AI. Try not to be a dick. Try not to use it to hurt anyone. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I guess we'll open up to questions now.
Do you have any melodic examples of things you trained it on?
How
does it do with melodies?
Not good. Let me see. Well, I mean, I guess my music is like melodic, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, Yeah, you heard how it does with that. It doesn't do great. Man, artist's gonna be out of job. Check this out. Bro, I'm not gonna have a job. Yeah, not good. Though the other one does pretty well, I suppose. Where is that one? The stable audio text-based one. I feel like that one does better on that kind of stuff. Mostly, I think, because it's very difficult to train it up. Like, if you train it on just the same melody, like you fed it 1,000 of the exact same melody, then it would probably be able to generate that melody. But usually when you're training on melodic stuff, you're giving it like tons and tons of different melodies, and the average of all of those melodies is no longer what we consider as humans to be a melody. It becomes like some noise shit. But yeah, this one, I guess, what is this? House Ibiza. Let's just try that. House Ibiza drum machine, and
specify the key for the melody.
yeah, let's key of C, tempo of 140 BPM. Let's see if it adheres to that. I'd be surprised if it does. Let's get a piano here just to make. And by piano, I mean operator. Okay, so we're looking for this, for those who don't have perfect pitch. Come on, Ibiza house drum machine. Oh wow, this is generating 1:30. Whoops. Well, that's gonna take a minute. Oh, wait, it's done, holy shit. Is that right? I swear to God, it's not. That is in the key of A. It doesn't count. All right, any questions?
Have you tried feeding it like a whole song, or do you need to be way more specific than just like giving it an entire song?
Yeah, that's what all these ones were. I trained it on like my discography, so like full tracks and full albums, and that's what this stuff was spitting out as. I know it doesn't sound like it, but it's trying to make a whole song here. And then it's just like different song.
Cool, thank you.
But yeah, it definitely doesn't do as good on whole songs as it does on singular sounds. Yep.
So would you say that the music industry as a whole, it's taking more money to kind of propel yourself deeper into the industry, or is it a little bit easier now with all the tools that's out there?
Sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Back in like 2010, 2011, before EDM was really big, you had artists like Seven Lines that would just, work on music and propel themselves deep into the industry. But now, since there's so many artists, I'm noticing that it takes more money, more tools, more industry standard of music. How does AI fit into that?
The way I look at it is electronic music is more booming now than ever. Like when I started making it, everyone in my town thought it was a joke. They were like, "Why are you making Mario Kart beats, bro? Come and join my metal band." So I don't know, like these days it's taken just as seriously as other genres. So I think that that's cool. As far as like AI being like some sort of tool to boost one's career. I honestly think ChatGPT might be better at that than these kind of tools. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the music is only a very small part of why somebody gets popular and makes a career out of music. It's got so much more to do with than just the music. It has to do with like your social media presence and like different other career moves. Definitely your team makes a big difference, like who's your agent, who's your manager, all that kind of shit. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of using AI to make music, it's definitely not going to make or break one's career, I think, at least not at the moment. And also, once it gets good enough to the point where it's making like incredible sounding music, then everyone has access to it anyway, probably, right? So then everyone's kind of on a level playing field anyway.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
So what's your experience, I guess, or your take on AI for mastering? So for example, I used to intern for this mastering engineer here in Atlanta called Colin Leonard, and he's got this like robot hand that handles a lot of his mastering projects, and like people actually pay for that. And it can like dial in analog gear down to like 1/10 of a decibel.
Oh, you're
So-
talking about that Mix Analog website?
No, he's got like a physical robot arm in his studio that like fucks with gear and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Huh. I found a website the other day called Mix Analog, I think it is. And is this it? Yeah, this is it. And basically they have like mechanical like pots and stuff on all the gear and I guess like a Flock 192 patch system, which is all digital to like patch everything. And you can buy credits on here or whatever and go run your stuff through there and it sends you back a file. I don't really think you need AI to do that. I think that's all doable without, but sorry, what was your question in regards to this?
So are you doing your own mastering to somebody else, or you're not doing it like through AI or anything like that, are you? The
I'm not
mastering
using
itself?
AI for mastering, no. I think at some point AI could be really good at mastering, like in terms of, like I was saying before, upsampling, turning stuff that's mono into something that has more sides, or reducing the brightness of stuff without like destroying the entire spectrum by just attacking like the certain bins that have the issues by like varying amounts, kind of like Soothe does, but instead of removing it spectrally, it kind of just like pulls it apart and recreates it. At some point it might get good enough to do this kind of stuff, but it's definitely not there right now. I mean, it's not even at the point now where you can generate a clean sounding drum. It's like, I mean, you can generate some clean sounding drums, but 90% of the stuff you get out of it sounds pretty shitty. But that's why I was saying, like, at the moment, I think it's really good as like a creativity stimulus type tool versus something that would create finished things or let alone mastered things.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hey.
my name's Tori. This is my very first music producer class ever in my whole life, so thank you. What are your thoughts on Warner Music Europe signing their first digital avatar to their record label?
My thoughts on Warner Music?
Yeah, they just signed like a digital avatar. It's like an Instagram, it's not a person. And they're like creating this, they're building her into a brand under their record label. It was the first music label to sign like a digital entity and not a human being.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know much about them actually. So I guess
Yeah,
I
I found it so interesting, as we are into the realms of AI and.
I know that Grimes made a tweet saying that anyone can train AI on her voice and use it as long as they give her like a 50% kickback or something.
Right. Yeah. Her name's Nunori. She has the robot has over 400,000 followers on Instagram, and she put out her first single, and I found it hilarious. Anyways, something to look into.
Yeah, and I didn't know much about it.
Hey Bill. I was wondering if you've had any luck when you're showing how to extract like the stems from RX. Have you had any luck with like the harmonic capture trick where you use like the delta mode in Soothe, so you can capture like the nasty harmonics from a sound, try to like layer them into neurobasses and stuff, like like the harmonics you get from like scrapey metal sounds and whatnot, so that you can try to make a neurobass more intense. Like, have you had any luck with that, with extracting like the gross harmonics from AI, like doing that, like?
Yeah, I've tried a bunch of different stuff to try and fix sounds that come out of AI, and honestly, I feel like the more I try to fix them, the more I destroy them. Like Soothe will just sort of like spectrally destroy them even more, kind of. Actually, RX can do a good job sometimes of cleaning up certain noises and stuff, but I try to be pretty gentle with it because otherwise it just wrecks it even more. So honestly, I just try to like lean into that fucked up sound and just like make it sound even worse, kind of. And I think that sounds better than trying to fix them, personally.
Have you had any luck like with like capturing them, like to sidechain gate them, just get those like nasty harmonics into a sound?
Sorry, something about sidechain?
Yeah, like sidechain gating, so that you can like kind of take a convolution reverb approach to like getting the harmonics on the sound.
I've not tried that. I did try recently using this like phase corrector thing for OTT though. I think NASCO released like this file that if you put it in a convolution reverb after OTT, it does like the opposite phase response to OTT to fix some of the problems with it. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, I was curious, like just like as layering strat to like get like nastier harmonics into a neurobass or something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, whatever works, I think is what you should do. Yeah, I guess like in this project, I've tried a few different things. Let's have a look. This is just compression. This is compression and EQ. Nothing. EQ. EQ. Yeah, it's mostly pretty simple. Actually, I guess there's Soothe on here. Yeah, pulling out some stuff here. But yeah, not that much Soothe, to be honest. It's like mostly, actually, I guess the spiff on this one as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess like I was saying, I more just use this as like a thing to help me with ideas, more so than trying to use the sounds directly. Though using the sounds directly is also interesting.
Yeah, the reactive creativity idea really helped me out over the years.
Right. Nice.
Hey, I have a question. If you've ever used Aphex Twin's Sample Brain, it's like a synth. It's a kind of similar, like generative. I don't know if it uses AI directly, but you train a model and it can output these types of weird sounds. If you've ever used that, and generally how, if you've ever used any other generative systems like Max MSP, what the creative process in those compares like to what you're doing with these new AI tools.
I believe I did look at this Sample Brain thing, but I don't know if, I think Sample Brain is actually a concatenative synthesizer. I don't think it's an AI thing. And the way concatenative synthesizers work is kind of similar, but not quite. You give it a data set known as a corpus, and then it like looks at the data set and figures out what it's got to work with. So let's say you just feed it like 50 kick drums, and then you say, all right, I want you to create this snare drum, and then it will cut together little pieces of samples from all the audio to like mosaic that snare drum together. And I think that that's what that is. And also I've seen people do that in Max MSP as well. This dude in Kanti made one. But yeah, no, I think this is like kind of a completely different, like unprecedented thing. Like having something that you can train on a folder and then just be like, make it, and it just makes it. Good or bad, doesn't matter. You can do it.
So, just curious here, I just want to know, how long have you been using AI in your works?
Probably like 6 months now. I think, yeah, Dance Diffusion came out pretty much at the start of this year, or like March this year, I think. So Yeah, this really has only existed for a few months, and I've pretty much been using it from not long after it came out.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's like a community that you're engaged in, like a Discord that, you know, is active in this AI music making that might be fun to be a part of.
Yeah, the Harmon AI Discord is probably where you want to go. So that the thing I was showing you before, let me see if I can find it again. Yeah, these people, Harmon AI, I believe the Discord is not here. Yeah, maybe they've converted to Stability because they recently merged with Stability AI, who is the company who makes Stable Diffusion. So they're now technically a branch of Stability AI. But I believe the Harmon AI Discord still exists.
So, outside of AI, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with Python by coding and connecting that to whatever DAW you're using. But knowing that you're using Ableton, do you know any resources, or have you ever done anything connected just Python, Ableton, or something like that?
Did you say connecting Python with Ableton?
Yes.
Think.
Like sending MIDI data.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I've done some stuff with JavaScript connected to Ableton using the Node.js module in Max. Azuki made a splitter plugin, which basically just connects to Deez's splitter algorithm thing and can just do stem splitting in Ableton. But honestly, now I think the better way to do that is using this thing called Gaudio. It's like, I believe this uses AI to do stem splitting, but this one has like resulted in the cleanest stem splitting that I've heard personally. I've got Mickey Avalon My Dick or Skyview featuring Eastwood. Nah, let's do the other one. It's cute. Actually, yeah, fuck it, let's go Mickey Avalon. So yeah, I tried to split Mickey Avalon My Dick. We'll see how it did. I don't exactly know how it uses AI to do this, I just know that it does. But yeah, so I guess this is what we got.
Dick plays on the double feature screen. Yo, Dick went straight to DVD.
My dick, bigger than a bridge. Yo, Dick.
Yeah, kind of hard. I guess this song really is just drums and a vocal. I'll go to one that has like a few more layers. But yeah, I was like pretty impressed with the stem separation this thing did. It's got a pretty cool interface too. Yeah, it's free. Well, I think it's free to a point. Like I believe it, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think you can do a certain amount of them and then it might ask you for money. I don't know, it's in beta at the moment, so it's like, yeah, anyway. Sorry, that was a tangent.
So I've been using Serum now for about 2 or 3 years. Do you still even use Serum, or have you moved on to another plugin that you like to use for your synths?
Yeah, I still use Serum. I just use it. I use a lot of different synths. I don't really like stick to just one or whatever. I use Current a lot at the moment, which just came out. You might have seen the shitstorm on Twitter about their subscription model.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh yeah, people got so mad. Phase Plan I use a lot. Pigments by Arturia is really cool. What else do I use? I don't know. I have a lot of plugins.
for me, sometimes like with all the new plugins, like especially with Ozone and like Soothe and like Ableton's EQ, like how do you determine, like does it get kind of confusing for you, or do you just basically like use your ears to get the sound that you want out of a song?
I mean, I kind of like the explorative nature of music making. I don't like it when I know what's going to happen exactly. Like if I know exactly what the thing is going to do, I find that boring. I kind of like the idea of like doing a thing and getting a result back that I kind of know what it's going to be, but it's a little different than I expected and perhaps even cooler than I expected. So that's mostly why I use lots of different plugins, and most of them all use the same fundamental laws. You know, it's like a synth is always like an oscillator, a filter, an ADSR, and maybe some effects or something, and some modulation or something. And you know, an EQ is always like a couple of filter poles, and it either cuts or boosts or stays the same or whatever. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of know what they're all going to do just based on having used a lot of the same types of plugins over the years, but I do kind of like it when I don't exactly know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Thank you.
You had mentioned some of the philosophies that you have sort of around AI. Were your philosophies considering AI, were they at a certain point when you started engaging with music generation, or was the process of using AI to generate sort of new musical ideas, did that inform your philosophy?
Yeah, it was definitely from using it is what started making me think that way.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, like, you know, when I would put in a bunch of sounds and then see what came out, I don't know, it just made me think that like it's not that much different to what I would do if I listened to all those sounds and then spat something out. Like if you gave me all of that, I would be like, I don't know how to recreate that. So like that's equivalent to noise basically. Versus if you just gave me like a very specific sound, I would probably be able to make something pretty similar.
Hey, Bill. First of all, thanks. Appreciate it. But also, I had two questions. One, I know you like to make some plugins and work with some coders and things like that. I didn't know if you were going to work on making some kind of plugin or something useful for yourself with AI. And then, have you seen any AI tools maybe for live performances or something like that as well that weren't discussed today?
I'm not going to make anything with AI. It's too complicated. I'm going to leave that to the smart people. But I have a few friends who are making some cool stuff with AI, so curious to see where it goes, and I'm glad that people are working on it. As for AI and performances, yes, I have seen some crazy shit. There's this company called Urcam. They're this French company who originally made like some of the first like spectral and granular modules, and I believe they make some of the modules in Max as well, and they've done a bunch of cool shit over the years.
How do you spell it?
Urcam, IRCAM. They're like a French company.
Cool, thanks.
You have 100% used their stuff if you've been producing music for a while, in some way or another. Yeah, these dudes. And they made this thing recently called Rave, and it's like a, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, it's somewhere on here, you'll find it. And this Rave thing is real-time generative, so, and it can do a style transfer. So my buddy Rob Clouth, he he trained a Rave model on his music, and he's like created a style transfer to where he can beatbox, and in real time it converts the beatboxing into his music, and it does a really good job of it actually.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't actually have a video to show you of it, unfortunately, but I wish I did.
Yeah, I'll do some digging. Do you usually find these things just from random searches, Instagram? Like, how do you go about staying on top of stuff like this?
Well, that one was actually because I was running a course on AI earlier this year and asked him to be a guest speaker, and his whole lecture was about how he did this.
Cool.
Hello. Yeah, so I was kind of wondering, like, with the spectrogram to audio thing, like the spectrograms that it spits out are pretty small dimensions, and that's probably another part of the reason why the sound quality is like not super good, other than the noise, as you pointed out. But like, when that thing you were just talking about with the style transfer, was that kind of like audio quality up to par to play at like a venue type of thing, or? Like, I guess I'm kind of wondering, like, when you're in the chats and the Discord, like, if people are talking about, like, what's it going to take for us to get to the point where it's, like, club level or something like that?
Yeah, well, for Rob's stuff, it would make sense because his music's already pretty glitchy and, like, messy sounding already. So for his stuff, it actually makes a lot of sense. For otherwise, I mean, it really depends on your standards. I mean, if your standards for music is like incredibly pristine, like super clean stuff, then yeah, AI is not there yet. And well, I mean, I think some combination of being able to train the models the same way that we can with dance diffusion and somehow get like a similar quality to that text prompted one would, in theory, create something that could probably be mastered and played at a club. But already, honestly, you could play this stuff in a set at a club. It just wouldn't sound like as good as some other stuff that you're playing, but you could probably master it or some sections of it to sound okay. I honestly think though that we're not that far off getting to a point where it can like generate pretty believable sounding stuff though. Like I would say a year max.
Okay, cool. And do you know, like, when it spits out the spectrogram, do you know what the size of that image is?
Yeah, 512 by 512 pixels.
Okay.
Which is why I think it can only do like 3-second chunks at the moment. I think to do longer than that, the spectrogram would have to be like really long.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or somebody want to win some plugins?
Hi, so I was wondering, what was your creative process like before you started messing around with AI, and how do you feel like it's changed, like how you just come up with ideas in general?
Honestly, my process hasn't changed much since AI became a thing. I have always pretty much just figured out some way to create randomness, and then from that randomness, start to make music out of it. And AI is just a more direct route to randomness, I think. Well, controlled randomness, I guess, right? Like, I would usually try to figure out, like, I don't know, some sort of synth patch or some sort of sampler setup or something, and then I would modulate it, but like those modulations would have parameters, and it could only go so far outside of these lines that I set and whatnot, and generate some sort of stuff. Like I was saying, I usually enjoy it more when the output that I hear is something that I expect to sort of hear, but it's a little different than what I expect, and that usually generates some ideas. So it was basically always that, but now I just have a better thing for that, I feel like.
Thank you.
As we're nearing the end, did everybody get a ticket? If you did not get a ticket, we're asking a question. Is there a question over here?
So I was thinking, so going back to the whole thing about like questions about AI and its future in music. So basically what you have been saying is that people shouldn't have to worry that much as long as AI is used like the right way.
Sorry, what was the question? Should people have to worry about what?
Like the whole debate about AI's future in music. So people shouldn't worry that much about AI as long as it's used in the right way.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much to worry about, to be honest. I think the same as anything, it's just going to be used as a tool. I don't think it's going to be something that will completely replace a whole industry. If it replaces an entire industry, we've got a massive problem. And I don't think anyone's going to let that happen. There's too many people earning too much money to let that happen, I think. But I really just don't think that AI does its best work when it's taking the creative role. I think it does its best work when it's taking over like laborious roles. And so I think it'll just be a time saver, if anything. I don't think it's necessarily going to be like a replacement for human creativity. It could be for certain things, like you could use it to generate some jingles or something for a commercial. But then at the end of the day, you got to kind of question like how creative that work is in the first place. Like if it can be replaced by an AI, then it's not, in my opinion, very creative anyway. Because an AI is really not that creative. You just feed it a bunch of shit and it just does that.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Besides like your plugins and Ableton, do you have any hardware synths or drum machines that you like to use, like physical, like synthesizers that you use?
Actually, my favorite piece of hardware lately has been the Polyend Tracker Mini. It's like a little Game Boy, but it's a tracker, so like a one of those things that runs downwards and is like step-based. I really like that thing. And in my studio, I have an Arturia Polybrute and an Oberheim /sequential OB6, and I like those a lot too. But the Tracker Mini has been my favorite thing lately.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Not so much AI related. I just produced my first song in Ableton, and I was curious about how you go about maybe just SoundCloud or DistroKid, or what do you think would be the? Because I don't think I'm ready to go for a label or anything quite yet, but like.
Yeah,
even
DistroKid is a great option for sure. Like for distribution, you mean, to get it on Spotify?
Yeah,
and stuff?
just get people to hear it.
Yeah, DistroKid's great.
DistroKid? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
This is kind of off topic to the lecture, but I was just curious. I know you've worked with Kubris before, and he's kind of inspiration to me, so I was just kind of curious what that process was like, and just, I guess, what you got out of it working with him.
Sorry, which artist?
Kubris, or maybe I'm mispronouncing it, Quebrus.
Oh, Kebris. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you say Kubris? I don't know. Yeah, working with him was cool. We just I just was chatting with him on Facebook a lot, and he just like sent me some stuff, and then I sent him some stuff, and yeah, it was pretty chill. It was a good collab.
Yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Nice.
So I think this is going to be even more off topic, but I'm just curious. What do you see at the forefront of there's like the AI, there's like the music creation part, but there's also now there's more than stereo. There's immersive audio. There's like Dolby Atmos. There's like binaural. Where do you see like that going forward, and how interested are you in exploring like the boundaries of reproduction and like the amount of speakers, the amount of channels, and stuff like that?
Do you mean in terms of sound systems?
Yeah, like in terms of you want your music to be available in more than just like stereo. I don't know, like maybe like in a immersive audio. I don't know, like in terms of like how do you expect to mix your music and create it for all these like different formats or different channel arrangements and stuff like that.
I think the one that's always going to take precedent is the one that everyone owns. So phone speakers or headphones, like AirPods.
Right.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you're getting a million streams on a song on Spotify, probably half of them listen to it on their phone speaker or AirPods. So I think you got to take those into account more than Dolby Atmos and stuff, which it's probably one guy down in Orlando who has a mastering studio or something. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So with the film writer strike that's happened recently, I know that some of the reason they were striking was because they didn't want AI to completely take their jobs. do you think that a negotiation like that would and could happen in the music industry as well?
I mean, I'm not ever going to strike because of AI, so everyone else can, I guess. I don't know. I don't really, yeah, I mean, it's kind of different because large language models have been trained on like words and scripts are words. I don't know, yeah, it's really hard to say if that would happen in the music industry. Yeah, I'm unsure.
How's it going, Mr. Bell? What about vocals? With AI trained vocals, have you messed with that?
Yeah, there's a few websites that can do that. There's also, I think it's called Fake You, the one that I was using. Is it this one?
Do you have any like demos of tracks that you're working on with them in it, or?
Not necessarily tracks, but I've definitely messed with this thing a little bit. And let's see, we got Pusha T saying "Run the track."
Run the track.
We got, looks like I was going through a shit ton of iterations to try and get this one word sounding good. Oh, what is this? Blind Summit by The Weeknd.
Blind Summit, Blind Summit, Blind Summit, Blind Summit, Blind Summit.
What is this? There are hands that are made up, and then there are hands that guide the...
There are the hands that made up, then there are the hands that guide the hands.
True to the void. My heart's blind, my love is blind, my soul is blind, my word is blind.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to do. Yeah, I
Like
guess.
a Ghost Rider, he did the Drake track.
Who?
Ghost Rider on Twitter. Some SoundCloud artist did a Drake track, and apparently they signed it.
Yeah, I've seen people mess around with it a bit. I haven't messed around that much with the vocal side of things, but there's this, if you do want to look into doing that, the thing you want to look into is called Sovitz, SVC. Yeah, if you want to like find a thing to run locally, you want the Sovitz SVC fork.
Do you have any demos? Are you?
Not with me. I do have it installed on my PC at home, but I didn't prepare any to show.
What model?
Sorry?
Which voice would you go for?
Just whichever models are available, basically. It's all pretty much, you're pretty much like stuck with just the models that are available unless you have gigabytes of some person's vocal and a large GPU to train them on.
Cool.
Hey there. So outside of music creation and generation, are there any AI tools that you're putting to use to help you, assist you with other aspects of running a music business, like social media or album generation, like album arts or anything like that?
For artwork, I have this dude in Italy who makes all my art, and I honestly don't really like a lot of the AI art that I've seen. But I use ChatGPT a lot. I basically stopped using Google. I just use ChatGPT now. I just ask it questions. And it honestly gives me way more concise and dense information than Google. Like the other day I was building a limp mass membrane trap, and I asked it to explain to me how it works and which way this thing could work better, and it gave me a full essay. It was great. A tuned limp mass membrane trap. It's like a sealed box with a membrane that pushes a certain distance into the box to suck up a certain frequency.
Cool. Well, thanks, Mr. Bill, for doing this.
Yeah.